My name is Yehudit Yerushalmi-Terris, and I'm almost 81 years old. I was born in Czernowitz, in Bukovina. It's in the north of Romania. It was in north of Romania. Now it's Ukraine since 1944. And I'm a Holocaust survivor. And as I was 5 years in Czernowitz, the country was divided between Russia, USSR, and Romania, and this area became Romania's zone. So, and I was born during the time of Romanian time. 1940, Russian entered the town. This is the time when I start to remember things. That's why I am starting from 1914, when I was 5 years. And my uncle was a football player, soccer football player. And he was in the 20s, a young person, and he disappeared. This was the first time when we had tragedy in the family. And he disappeared, and nobody knows until now, 70 years, 75 years, where he is. I think when the Russian came, they took him somewhere in Siberia, I don't know where, and we couldn't find him until now. Only a year afterwards, in June 1941, the area was occupied by the Romanian again, and supported by the German Nazis military. The town was bombarded. I had a sister. She was younger than me. She was 1 year old. And in the town there was a chaos. We couldn't bring her help. And she died at the home of my grandparents, because my father was mobilized by the Russian army, who retreated at the town because there was Russian in the town. There were Russian in the town. So they retreated to Ukraine, to Russia, and they mobilized all men who they could to mobilize, and we remained, my mother and myself and my sister remained at home. So my mother said she wanted to go to her parents, my grandfather's house, to be there together. And there my sister died, because we couldn't go out and bring her help. And we had to bury her in the courtyard, behind the house, and then we said 7 days Shiva. After 2 weeks, my father came back, and here I'm telling the story which I heard with what my father told us when he came back. He came back. He was very neglected with a bird, and after 3 weeks, and he knocked at the door, and my grandmother opened the door, and she said, they have taken our jewels, everything from us, because before 4 Ukrainians robbed us and took all the money and took everything from the house. So she started to cry. Again, we don't have anything to give you. He said, no, I'm your son-in-law. He was so neglected. And what happened to my father? when he was taken by the Russian army, they came to the river Dniester, and as they climbed, the whole army, the Russian army from the area, climbed on the bridge, and the German airplanes came and bombarded the bridge, and all the army fell in the river. It's a big, stormy river. My father was waiting his share to climb the bridge, and then came other airplanes and shoot at the soldier on the remained soldiers. My father was wounded, and others, the whole army was destroyed and killed. And after a few hours, he came to himself, and he saw nobody is left. He started to come back to us, and he went. During the days, he hid himself, and at night he walked. And he came after 3 weeks to us. So that's the reason he was so neglected. And on the way back, he had a Russian a uniform. He asked a peasant to give him his clothes, and he gave him the new uniforms. So he came in drugs he had on his body. And then afterwards, in the town, German Romanian occupation, and no food remained in the town, and bread was rationalized, and they started a ghetto in Czernowitz. And in October, they started to evacuate people and send to the east, the Romanian with the German. My father was needed, my father went back to his company where he worked. And as he was needed worker, he had an authorization to remain in the town. But my mother didn't want to use this authorization, and all the Jews had been ordered to come to the rail station and to send to the east. Nobody was telling us where to go, where we are going, where they are going, where they are being sent. And my mother and myself and my father, we volunteered with my grandparents to come to the railway station. And thousands of Jews came to the railway station to be sent to the east. To the east, and nobody told us where. And they put people in the wagons, 100 people or whatever, I don't know how many, and sent, and trains are going from the railway station. There I lost my parents, and I am standing in the station, the railway station, and I was crying. I was 5.5 years, and I don't know. A soldier came to me and asked me, "Why are you crying?" I told him I lost my parents, and thousands of people are there, and shouting, and Rhein, raus, and German are pushing to the wagons, to and train, and noise of the trains. And I answered him, I think to the right. And he took me by hand, and that's one of the miracles, I don't know. And he took me by hand, and we walked on the platform, and after a short time, I found my parents. And then we have been pushed in one of the wagons, and we are traveling to the east. Days and nights. And after a few kilometers, they opened the doors, and people have been died from suffocation, and they throw them away and then closed again, and we are going until we came to the Dniester, the same Dniester which I told you before. And they opened the doors of the wagon from the train, and we are pushed out, and there is snow outside. Half snow, snowing, rainy. The terrain was muddy. The earth was full with water, and we had to go to join a convoy. And we have been pushed with soldiers nearby, Romanian soldiers, and they are shouting at us, and who couldn't walk has been shot or beaten to death. And we saw on the sides of the banks people who are being beaten or dead, and we had to walk. And we walked, and I couldn't walk, so my father took me on his arms. My mother took me, my aunt, and my grandfather and my grandmother. And we walked until we came. At night we slept in barracks or in abandoned houses, and cold outside. It's already freezing snow outside, and we are pushed to go every day until night, without food, without water. And as we came to a certain place, at night my grandmother died, and in the early morning my grandfather. Difference of some few hours, they both died. And then my mother asked and paid for a special to bury them in the snow and dig a hole for them, not to be with all the others like a mass grave. And then we had to continue to walk until we came to a certain place. It was already twilight, and my father said to my mother, "We won't survive. Their plan is to kill us on the way, to be dead on the way." So they decided that we are running away from the convoy, and we knocked at the Ukrainian woman, and she opened the door, and my father said to her, "Please take us in, we are starving, we are freezing, take us in." And she had a soul, and she took us inside, and she put us in her bed, and she told my father, "If they are coming asking for you, you are my brother, and you are my sister-in-law, and you are my sister, and that's your child on myself." And she gave us her bed, and it was like heaven. And we heard outside other people too run away, and they have been shot on the spot. And we saw outside from the window people like black stains in the snow. And the second day, the third day, I don't remember the exact date. And she told us, please take a smaller amount of food, take a small bag, and you have to leave my house because I'm afraid they will come. My neighbors will tell them, the authorities, and you will be killed and myself too. So only in the early evening, we left her house and we start to walk. We don't know the area, we don't know where we are, and we are walking until we came to abandoned barrack, and there was no food there was no light and we stood there a few days, but the food has been finished, and what to do else? So my aunt told my mother, I think in this area they plant sugar beets. So at night they went and dig behind the snow to look for sugar beets. And after half a night, they found some sugar beets, and this was our food for several days. But it was dangerous to remain in the same place because the area was occupied by the Romanian and by German soldiers. German occupation. Ukraine was occupied by German occupation. And there have been soldiers, a group of soldiers who have from the Einsatzgruppen, who their aim was to hunt Jews, to kill Jews. If they found Jews who left the ghetto or ran away from the convoy or had themselves, their aim was to kill Jews. So it was dangerous to sit in the same place. So we left this barrack and we start to walk. Again, we don't know the area. And we walked and we found a peasant, and we asked him, where are we? He told us, you are nearby a ghetto. It's nearby a small town called Shargorod. So our aim, we want to come to this ghetto. We came to the ghetto. There no entrance. The ghetto was full with people, like 10,000 people in a small area, without any preparations. And the town was like 4,000 people. The small town, 4,000 or 5,000, a small village, you can tell. And suddenly came 10,000 people without sanitation, without food enough, without housing. So the ghetto was full and they didn't want to let us in. We begged to let us in. We cannot survive outside. So after negotiation, they took us in. In a short time, the typhoid sickness break out because of the lack of sanitation, and people lived in 10 people in one room, and one got sick, the other it was very contagious. So my father, my mother, and my aunt, they all got sick of typhoid. And they put us in a barrack with all the sick people, without any medication, without any sanitation. And dead people, and people who are going to die. And it was And then they cut our hair because the typhoid sickness comes from lice, and without sanitation, one gets to the other with lice. And so they cut us our hair. And this was for me, I cried very much because of this. I felt myself so embarrassed. And after 2 weeks or 3 weeks, my mother felt a little better, and my aunt, my father was still unconscious. He was very sick. And we left this barrack, but my father remained there. After a week more, he awake, and the first thing which he asked was, where's the young doctor who treated me? Because there have been Jewish doctors, but they couldn't do much because they didn't have any drugs or any medicaments or whatever. So he was told that the young doctor already is not with us. He died. Himself died. And then we went out from this barrack, and we sit between others in the narrow houses with thousands of people. And every day we went out working. They sent people to work in the agriculture in the nearby for the Romanian. Once we went out and we didn't return. We ran away. And we ran away, and after the river there was so full of water, so in the nearby there were small houses in the half water, half earth. So we came to a house, and an old woman opened, and she was so poor. She took us in, but she didn't have food. So my mother took all her jewels, my aunt, and she was sent to the market, and she bought some flour for us and some bread. And this was our food for a short time. And then there I got sick with chickenpox, and after 10 days I got better, and they put on myself like gasoline against the lice. I always had on my head, on my body, gasoline. And then we left this house, and we started to walk between the small villages. But we couldn't survive, so we went again to the ghetto. We came to the ghetto. After 2 days, my father, they mobilized the German. There came an order that all the men had to be sent to work on a bridge, and my father and others have been sent to build a bridge on the river Bug. He didn't know where, but now I know it's on the river Bug. And other thousands of slave workers have been building there the bridge. And we remain in the ghetto. After a year, my father, as he was a German speaking, he was working near the main engineer, the head of the engineers of the bridge, from the bridge. And he told my father that the workers will finish the bridge, they will finish with all the workers. Nobody will remain. So my father had, and they have been paid like occupation mark. All the workers have been paid occupation marks. What I mean, what it meant that occupation mark, it's a mark which is less valid, less worth than the real mark. So he had like 15 mark, and he took his clothes, he washed his clothes in the river and his shoes, and to remain without shoes, it's almost to be dead, because if you are in the snow without shoes, you cannot buy your shoes. You are a slave, yeah? So, but he took his shoes and his clothes and the money, and the train has coming inside the camp. It was a big camp, working slave camp. And the train entered, and after a few hours, he brought things for the bridge. And after a few hours, the train had to leave the camp. So my father, in the afternoon, took his clothes and his shoes and the money, and entered a wagon of this train, of one of the wagons. But the soldier wanted to shoot at him, and he gave him his clothes and the shoes and the money, and he said to him, "Okay, I didn't see you." And my father entered the train, and the train left the camp, and after 20, 30, 40 kilometers, he jumped from the train and started to walk. Again, he hid himself during the days, and he was caught by a peasant and beaten, and he was starving, almost starving from hunger, but he continued to walk. After a certain time, he came back to the ghetto, to us. And he looked like a skeleton. Excuse me. Afterwards, my parents and my aunt, they decided we leave the ghetto for good. We could not survive the ghetto. And again, when we went outside working, we ran away because it was almost like an open ghetto. And we ran away, and again we started to walk between the villages. We stood in a village 2, 3, 4 months. My father, my mother and my aunt worked in the fields of the peasants. And why do they needed us? Because all the men have been mobilized by the Russian when they retreated. So only were left kids and elder people and women. So they needed every hand to work in the fields. And this was a time when we wandered from one village to another. Until 44, the area was freed, was we got freedom, and then we could go back to Czernowitz. As we came back to Czernowitz, I couldn't go to school because I didn't know Russian. And they took me a private teacher, and she taught me Russian, so I could enter the school. And after a short time, we got permission to leave Russia. It was already Russia. And we went to Romania. We came to Bucharest. My mother had a brother in Bucharest. And again, I don't know Romanian. They took me a private teacher to study Romanian. I studied there, and then I went to a French school, and again I had to study French. In 1950, we got permission to leave Romania, and we came to Israel. Again, I don't know Hebrew. I studied in the morning, I was in the school, I didn't understand any word. I didn't understand anything. And then I studied Hebrew at noontime in the night, like 12, 14 hours I studied Hebrew until I could speak and I could understand and manage in the school. We went to a settlement near Rishon LeZion, and my parents and other 30 families established a moshav, which is now called Gan Sorek. It's nearby Rishon LeZion. It's like 15 kilometers from Rishon LeZion. And then I went to high school, and I studied in the university. And I married, and I have 2 children, a boy and a girl, and 6 grandchildren, and 3 grandchildren. I worked at AII, Israel Aerospace Industries, and I am a pensioner from this company, and there I met my husband, Al Terris, and now I am volunteering for the pensioners organization of the company, and I am lecturing at the Yad Vashem in English and in Hebrew and German. And I'm telling the story of my life and my story from the Holocaust. I was in Münster, invited by the mayor of Münster, and I spoke in 6 or 7 gymnasiums there about my story. That was really a big experience for me. And I'm happy that I could survive the Shoah, the Holocaust, and have a family and a big and loving family, and that I'm in Israel, and we are free people. That's my story. Thank you for listening.